Welcome to the show Versus. Today, during the show, we're just going to have a panel of 3 different respected movie watchers, and we're going to have 2 movies head-to-head, and they're going to decide between the 2 movies. So let's welcome the guests, and we're going to ask them their names, and if y'all could tell us where you're from as well.
Cool. My name is Nolan Hodge. I'm from DeKalb, Illinois, up by Chicago.
My name is Andy Seals, and I'm from Wilmore, Kentucky.
My name is Jacob Jones, and I'm actually from Fisherville, Kentucky, which is about 20 minutes east of Louisville.
Okay, so y'all are able to make any comments you want, and also to comment on what the others say as well during the movie. So an example of this would be like, the movies could be like The Polar Express versus Princess Bride. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. 12 Angry Men versus 12 Years a Slave.
Well, those are definitely both really good films. I think I'm going to have to go with 12 Years a Slave, just because I think it gave this really personal perspective into the whole issue of slavery, and it really affected me on a deep level. So I'll say 12 Years a Slave.
I'm going to have to disagree with Nolan and say 12 Angry Men, just because it is a classic, yes. It's one of the few classics that doesn't really bore me, and it's also one of the few classics that I think is very progressive in the ideas that it proposes to the audience.
All right. I actually forgot your name. I apologize, but I'm going to disagree with you and go with 12 Years a Slave. I think 12 Angry Men, it is a classic, but 12 Years a Slave was kind of, it opened up dialogue about slavery in the way that Schindler's List opened up dialogue about, the Holocaust and how that kind of affected people of that era. So 12 Years a Slave for sure.
Okay. The next one is Dark Knight Rises versus Air Force One.
I think I'm going to have to go with The Dark Knight. I love it. I think Air Force One is kind of fun, but The Dark Knight's a lot deeper and a really great film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Air Force One does have really great action scenes and a really great plot that you wouldn't necessarily think could happen, but in the film when it does happen, it's terrifying. But Dark Knight is deeper, and I think that's a better film.
Yeah, I'm going to have to, agree with these two and say Dark Knight. And also another element that kind of comes from The Dark Knight is arguably the most iconic villain performance since Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter is in Heath Ledger's Joker. And yeah, I mean, that alone is enough to sell me on that movie.
Okay, the next one is A Christmas Story versus Anchorman.
I'm going to go with A Christmas Story. Anchorman has some funny moments, some good quotable dialogue, but A Christmas Story really captures what childhood is like for a kid.
Yeah, I would say A Christmas Story as well. It can be overwatched, but as a film, it's better than Anchorman, I believe.
Yeah, I'm gonna say A Christmas Story. Anchorman's quotable, but Christmas Story is just it's a classic, and when my dad introduced me to the film, I was like, what am I watching? And now I just want to watch it again. So.
Okay, the next is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone versus Gone with the Wind.
That's a tough one. I love Harry Potter. I think some of the other films are better than the Sorcerer's Stone. I'm going to go with Gone with the Wind.
Actually, I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. We're going to cut to a commercial real quick, and then we'll be right back.
I win that debate.
Sometimes you gotta go back to actually move forward. And I don't mean go back and reminisce or chase ghosts. I mean take a big step back. Like go from winning an Oscar to doing a car commercial. My agent was like, I could understand if you did this right after the Lincoln Lawyer. That would have made sense. But you don't buy a Lincoln because it makes sense. You do it because you love it, or because you're an Uber driver. I feel safe in here to drive around all night long, contemplating the important questions of life. Who am I? Why am I here? When I'm done rolling up this booger, should I eat it or throw it out the window? Feels good. Like a tiny little tennis ball. Hi there, little fella. Ain't you a vision?
Welcome back to Versus. We're going to continue on. Skyfall versus Star Wars 5.
I'm going to have to go with Star Wars 5. No, but seriously, I think Empire Strikes Back is a near perfect movie. Skyfall is good for James Bond, but Star Wars.
Yeah, even if it wasn't Episode 5, I would still say the Star Wars, just because I've never been able to get into Bond films. I've never really felt any connection to them at any level, and so Star Wars 5. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say Empire Strikes Back for sure. It's the best of the Star Wars movies so far for me, and I liked Casino Royale actually more than I did Skyfall. I thought it was a better action movie, especially for a franchise that kind of needed a reinvigoration. But yeah, Star Wars for sure.
Okay. The next one is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull versus Matrix Revolution.
I'm going with the Matrix Revolutions just because of how bad Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is. I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'd like to add, I think that Matrix 2 and 3 weren't bad films. They were just not good compared to the first one. I still enjoyed them, so definitely Matrix Revolutions.
I have meticulously avoided seeing both of these for quite some time, so I would stay safe. But I'm going to say Matrix Revolutions simply for the fact that, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first time I saw that movie, it kind of grew on me over time. But the first time I saw The Matrix, I absolutely loved it. I had a ball.
Okay. The next is Die Hard versus Lion King.
I'm going to have to go with Die Hard. Classic Disney has always been kind of tough for me to get into because I wasn't quite raised on it. I was more into Pixar as a kid. But Die Hard, I think, for creating an action hero that we really care about and putting him in that situation, I think is really good. Die Hard.
Yeah, I would agree with Die Hard. I loved everything about the film. I think Bruce Willis is a wonderful job, but particularly I love Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. I think he's a wonderful villain, and you really hate him, and that's something to be admired.
I have not yet seen Die Hard. I know you probably want to shoot me for that, but I would have to say Lion King simply for what it, how iconic it is in the animated world.
Okay. We're gonna go to the last one: Star Wars: A New Hope versus Pulp Fiction.
It's the second Star Wars movie.
That's a tough one because they're both incredibly good films, but I'm going to go with Star Wars. I think it really affected me on a deep level when I was a kid, and I still think about it, and it still is in my imagination. Pulp Fiction is great, but from a personal perspective, Star Wars.
From a personal perspective as well, I would have to say Pulp Fiction because it kind of showed me that you can deal with heavy things in a lighthearted way.
Pulp Fiction. For me, Star Wars is great and is iconic, but Pulp Fiction is dialogue driven and it's very hard to copy that sort of thing.
It's been great to be here with y'all, and thank you for coming on the show Versus, and we hope to see you next time.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah.